York attitude, Florida charm. Talk so hot, it's a 4-alarm. Right, smart, unafraid. A double shot of truth on your radio waves.
Hey, hey, oh, whoa. Time to crank up your radio. Hey, hey, whoa, whoa. Time for the Rich Stevens Radio Show.
All right, here we go. How are you? I'm Rich Stevens. Friday. It is the end of the week, the work week anyway. It might not be the end of the work week for you, but it is for me. So I'm happy about that, and you should be happy too. After all, if you're happy, I'm happy, and if I'm happy, you're happy. See how that works? And just when you get here and you think things couldn't be any worse, looky what I got here for you. Now, you're not going to hear about this from anybody else. I have my sources, and my sources are telling me that another swamp snake is about to be outed for the slimy, sleazy, slithering traitor that he actually is. Now, I, for one, I've talked about this in the past. I, for one, have always thought that Mitt Romney was a piece of crap. I never liked him. There's something, you know how you can see somebody and you watch them speak, and it's just something that kind of like that sixth sense kind of thing. That's what I'm talking about with Mitt Romney. First time I ever saw him, I thought that. And he's the one that didn't waste any time attacking President Trump over his perfectly normal and acceptable call with the Ukraine president. The usual cast of the pathetic hashtag Never Trump losers, which is led, by the way, by Mitt Romney and Ben Sasse, always lumber out of their dark, depressing, emo caves to rally against Trump whenever the fake news media and the Democrats unleash an attack on him. And you could pretty much set your watch by it. I mean, this is just, continues to go on and on and on. So get this. Romney goes through the usual troubling and deeply concerned soundbite crap that he always does. It's about as phony as his veneers and that fake tan. Even though dear old Mitt is not telling you, or I should say what he's not telling you, is that he has very close ties. Not had, but has very close ties to Hunter Biden's company. That's the one where he made $50,000 a month and is at the center of this entire Biden-Ukraine scandal. $50,000 a month. Now, as it turns out, Mitt's national security advisor, now you gotta roll with me here. Mitt's national security advisor for his failed 2012 campaign is sitting on the board of Burisma, or Burisma. So you're wondering what Burisma is, right? That's the company that Hunter Biden worked for, the one that has the Vice President Biden strong-armed the Ukrainian government over. So his son wouldn't be involved in an investigation, so they thought. Now, to make matters even worse, Mitt's former national security advisor and the board member at Burisma is also a high-ranking former CIA operative. A little bit of a coincidence, right? So the man at the center of this new revelation is named Joseph Coffer Black. And as, of course, you'd imagine he has ties to another Trump hater, John Brennan. Now, Coffer Black made quite a name for himself during his stint. And this is, to me, this is truly unbelievable. But here's the thing. During his stint, this is a CIA guy, which is a community of mid and high-ranking officials who today absolutely detest President Trump. Another name for people like Coffer Black is Deep State. Now, back in 2017, 6 months after Hunter Biden's bailed from the Burisma, Coffer Black joined the board of directors. Or more likely, all of this is somehow connected, and many people are scrambling and working together in order to keep their secrets safe, and of course, well hidden from us, the American people, again. So, this explains a lot about Mr. Mittens there, his reaction to so many different things. It's really hard to keep up with the news swirling around the Ukraine flab. But, the more and more we find, and the deeper and deeper it gets into the so-called deeper state, things are coming to light. I'm curious how long it's going to take for you to hear about, or for us to hear about, the Mitt Romney thing. I'm not talking about me just telling you about it. I mean, now that I've exposed it, how long is it going to be before it actually hits the mainstream media? It's probably not going to happen. But, you know, these are the kind of things that I think we need to become more apprised of, because then we can make healthier decisions on who knows and who is and what they are and all these behind-the-scenes things. I mean, this is the same way you have a president. I'm talking about President Obama and President Clinton, how they're able to go into the White House as president of the United States for 2 terms and leave with millions of dollars in their bank account. It just doesn't make sense. Excuse me. And it's really scary. Now, so what we know as far as the Ukraine thing, because there's so much. Let me give you a little bit. The former U.S. envoy to Ukraine, Kurt Volker, was the first witness in the House's impeachment inquiry yesterday. He supposedly testified that he tried to convince Rudy Giuliani that Giuliani's sources regarding Hunter Biden were not credible. Now, House Republicans are, of course, drafting a formal resolution to condemn House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff. And House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy called on Nancy Pelosi to halt the impeachment inquiry until the process is laid out and explained fully to the House and the American people. Now, it gets even dirtier. CNN has refused a Trump campaign ad slamming Joe Biden over his so-called ties to corruption in the Ukraine, saying it makes assertions that have been proven demonstrably false. Isn't that what CNN is all about? Demonstrably false? I mean, talk about calling the kettle black. And I can't wait. It hasn't reached the president yet, I'm sure, to find out. I mean, you know, the president doesn't deal with stuff like that. That's why he's got a campaign staff. But I can't wait till the campaign staff tomorrow tells the president, or later today, that CNN refused an ad. CNN refused to take money from the Trump campaign to run a commercial. Boy, is this going to get, I keep saying this, but I'm telling you, it's going to get nasty and nastier. Now, the State Department announced a $40 million sale of missiles to Ukraine, and these are the same missiles that the Ukraine president told President Trump he wanted to buy just before Trump supposedly asked for that infamous favor. Now, a second Republican senator, you keeping up now? A second Republican senator has broken with Trump and expressed support for the whistleblower. This is Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa. She said at a town hall meeting yesterday, she said, quote, "Whistleblowers should be protected. I stand with Chuck Grassley on this. We have laws in place." And then there's a story, and you probably haven't heard about this yet either, that the Energy Secretary, Rick Perry, from Texas, is supposedly going to resign next month. He's steering clear of Trump controversies, but his travels to Ukraine, including for the president's inauguration in Ukraine, are, of course, coming under a big microscope now. So that's why he's trying to get out before he's pulled in, supposedly. All of this is just, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, this is what soap operas are made of. But what's going to happen here is, well, 2 things. Trump is going to be proven that he did nothing wrong, number 1. Trump is going to win re-election. We all know that. And number 3, somebody's going to make a hell of a lot of money on a book and probably a movie on this whole fiasco. And speaking of fiascos, here's one in a totally different direction. Since Russia hasn't been in the news lately, let me bring up Russia. There's a guy that has filed a lawsuit against Apple claiming that they turned him gay. I mean, what is wrong with people? So the lawsuit in which the lawyer insists is very serious. The guy claims that an iPhone app manipulated his sexuality. He claims the app delivered to him a cryptocurrency called Gaycoin instead of Bitcoin that he ordered. Along with it came a message that read, "Don't judge until you try." So the guy says, I thought in truth, how can I judge something without trying? I decided to try same-sex relationships. Now I have a boyfriend, and I don't know how to explain this to my parents. My life has been changed for the worse and will never become normal again. So he's looking for $15,000 in damages. His case is actually due in court later this month. I mean, if they're going to take this case seriously anywhere in the world, I'm guessing it would be Russia, right? Because Russia actually passed a law back in 2013 against gay propaganda, so this would fall right into it. Or maybe he should just order a straight coin. But to me, it sounds like a load of bullshit, to use a word that has been in the news recently. And speaking of in the news, Michael Avenatti, remember this guy? And Stormy Daniels, they're not close. They're not even friends anymore. The porn star's former attorney is now demanding $450,000 that she received in a settlement with Columbus, Ohio police following a bogus arrest at a strip club. He says she owes him more than $2 million in legal fees and expenses related to her legal flap with President Trump. Now, Avenatti has filed a lien on the money in federal court in Ohio. Did I miss something? I thought Avenatti's in jail. How's he doing this from jail, unless I'm wrong? Now, this should be a pretty open and shut case. If there's a representation contract, he's actually entitled to the money. The reason he was so effective against Trump is that he was willing to play dirty pool. Nobody should be surprised about this. He's a lawyer. But Stormy also has a lot of royalties from that book that she wrote. So, this is the kind of thing. It's nice to hear things like this because it takes away from the other things. I'm sorry, you hear my ice in the glass of water here. And it's a dark day at Sports Illustrated. This is so sad that we keep hearing about these things. Stores closing, magazines going out of business. Major chains, Bed Bath & Beyond announced yesterday they're going to close a bunch of stores too. But it's a very dark day yesterday at Sports Illustrated. The magazine had to lay off half of its employees. Can you imagine? Staffers were advised yesterday morning that there would be 2 transition meetings, one for those who would stay on and one for those who were losing their jobs. But just before they were scheduled to start, it was postponed, and that gave everyone hope that a last-minute deal was in the works, and the staff drafted a statement of support for keeping the magazine just the way it is intact, but it wasn't meant to be. Because a few hours later, the transition meetings took place, and 50% of Sports Illustrated employees got the bad news. I mean, they're competing with other media outlets and bloggers and paid fan sites for pretty much every pro and major college team. The marketplace, it just became too competitive. But if you think about it, Sports Illustrated was revolutionary, both in its editorial content and its full-color photography, long-form sports journalism. I mean, it's basically dead now. ESPN, the magazine, is also folding its print edition in favor of just an online presence. I mean, that's the way, unfortunately. I mean, there was a magazine that I used to love, and some things you just like to pick up and read in your hand. I'm really like a techno geek, so I was really into PC Magazine, and I had a subscription. I used to pick it up, I used to read it, used to learn things I didn't know, and now I think you could just get it online where you read it on your computer, which is not the same. So I know how fans of Sports Illustrated are going to take this news because it's not the same. And this is, while we move forward, while we get more technologically advanced in our everyday lives, and while some of the things are very good, there's some of the things, I'm a nostalgic kind of guy. I like some things the way they used to be and would like, quite frankly, for those things to go back the way they were. I mean, you knew when Playboy magazine stopped printing the magazine and started going to online only, that was the future right there. It's kind of like newspapers, which are, 3-4 pages these days? Nobody's advertising in newspapers anymore because nobody reads newspapers anymore. And the sad part about that is they finally figured out the technology, how not to get the ink on your fingers. I remember in New York, when I lived in New York, picking up the Post or the news, even occasionally the New York Times, especially on Sunday, and you get the ink all over your fingers because it was just hot off the press, literally. But those, times have changed. I mean, the last few years when I lived in New York, I would pick up the New York Post and read page 6 and the inside back cover. Page 6 was all the celebrity stuff, the gossip stuff happening around town, and I used to be in there quite often, so I always would look after I did something stupid or was with somebody, and, that was noteworthy, and they put my a little article there. I was in one year, I think it was back in 1988, I was on page 6 17 different times, which was pretty damn good for a disc jockey and an entertainment reporter in New York City. At least I thought it was pretty good. Especially the time when whoever was the writer at the time called me Rich Stern instead of Rich Stevens. And apparently she got Howard Stern and Rich Stevens mixed up, and Howard Stern was on the air for almost an hour. I didn't know this until, this is when he was on K-Rock 92.3, I think it was, in New York. And people were calling me and telling me that, hey, you have to turn on Howard Stern. I said, why? People were waking me up. Remember, we didn't have cell phones back then. And people were calling the house and telling me, turn on Stern, turn on Stern. And Stern was talking about me. And I remember the one thing I heard that stuck with me all these years is that he didn't say anything bad about me. I've met him several times. But he had nothing bad to say about me. As a matter of fact, he said, I'm quoting now, he said, Rich Stevens is the only good guy over there at WPLJ, which I thought was kind of cool, but nobody at the station liked it when they heard it. But he just went on this rant because the page 6 writer wrote Rich Stern instead of Rich Stevens, kind of mixing the two together. It's things like that I miss about New York. That there's nothing here in South Florida that, they used to have a radio column in the Sun Sentinel, and they dumped that like what? It was about 7-8 years ago maybe. And coincidentally, it was dumped right after they did the, I think it was called 5 Questions. I can't remember the guy's name. I apologize in advance. But I think they did 5 Questions with Rich Stevens. And I want to say Sunday, in the Sunday paper. Somewhere I have it. I got to find it and post it online on my blog. And he wrote a really nice little bit about me there. And then they stopped doing it. You might be able to search. Oh, never mind. I'll find it. I'll put it on the blog for you. That plane crash at Bradley International Airport, we now know, and thank you, I think it was Glenn that posted yesterday. It's hard for me to look at the comments when I'm trying to look at my own notes, what I'm going to talk about and things that I've scribbled down, so I apologize. 7 people confirmed dead. And then this looks like a bad time for crashes. Now, that was a World War II bomber. 3 people are dead and 3 more injured after a small plane crash happened yesterday in Michigan. The plane went down near Capital Region International Airport, just outside the state capital in Lansing. Now, there's no official word on the cause of the accident or the names of the victims yet, but the pilot was reportedly preparing to land, and operations at the airport continued without any issues. And that I just don't think that people want to fly in a plane that seats fewer than 50 people. I mean, accidents happen. It's awful, but you're still safer in the air than behind the wheel, so they say. And in Florida yesterday, there was 2 helicopter crashes. This was like in a marshy area in Polk County, which is, I guess you could say, between Tampa and Orlando. And a gyrocopter, I'm not exactly sure what a gyrocopter is. Is that a thing where you like spin the wheel while you're doing it? I don't know. But the gyrocopter went down. And they radioed for help, and a sheriff's office helicopter went to locate the gyrocopter, found the gyrocopter, and less than 50 feet away, after hovering over the gyrocopter, also crashed. And the amazing thing is there was 1 person on the gyrocopter, 1 deputy sheriff on the sheriff's office helicopter. Neither one of them, thank God, had any life-threatening injuries, except that they were stuck in the muck and the mud. And usually when the muck and the mud is around, you can have snakes and alligators. So that's the first thing that went through my mind. But the good news is they're going to be okay. Now, the NTSB will be on scene later today to try and figure out what happened. It's just too much of a coincidence that such a close distance and something like this could possibly happen. Speaking of happening things, the fact that you can't bring back lives, there's nothing that you can do to pay off somebody to make up for that. 58 people died in that Vegas shooting 2 years ago. MGM Resorts has made a big move to help with the healing, at least. The company has put together a settlement with their attorneys for victims and their families for $800 million. That's for everybody. It's not one person. Now, the exact total is going to depend on how many participate in the settlement. MGM says insurance will cover close to $750 million. So they're going to put up another $50 million, which is nothing to the MGM Resorts. Now, it was back on October 1st, 2017. Stephen Paddock opened fire, you may recall, from his hotel room at a country music festival that was going on right across the street. It's not costing MGM that much money. I mean, we're not going to award them for being great or anything. On the other hand, it wasn't a slam dunk, and victims and their families are going to prevail in court no matter what. But this is a good day to help, a good way, I should say, to help healing, regardless of the legal issues that are involved in this particular thing. I wanted to do I used to do this a while ago. Let me just take a sip here. Sorry. Ever since I got this Sjogren syndrome, where it makes your mouth very, very dry, it's just, I could hear in my voice a little bit where it obviously affects my speaking sometimes. And it's hard to speak with cotton candy in your mouth, and that's what it feels like. But I had a couple random things I wanted to run by you today. Some facts that I just did a little digging for something different so I can leave on a good note today. I always like to leave on a good note. When you cut grass and it smells so good, that fresh cut grass smell? Well, apparently it's a distress signal. The grass is releasing a chemical that makes it smell to try to save itself from the mortal wound that it just had to deal with, i.e. being cut. Could you imagine if that happened when you went to your stylist or haircut or whatever you want to call it, and you get your hair cut, had that kind of smell because your hair was in distress and trying to save itself from the mortal wounds that just occurred? Here's one if you're from New York. The Verrazano Narrows Bridge in New York City was misspelled for 58 years. Now, you may or may not know it's named after an explorer named Giovanni da Verrazzano, and his last name has 2 Z's. The bridge only had 1 Z from 1960 until it was finally changed last year. How do you miss something like that? Here's another one. The White House was totally open to the public through the early 1900s. Andrew Jackson had to spend his first night when he became president in a hotel because there were 20,000 people partying at the White House after his inauguration, and it was just too rowdy. He wasn't going to be able to go to sleep, so he went to a hotel. Here's another. The phrase blowing smoke up your ass comes from the late 1700s, when doctors would give tobacco enemas to drowning victims to resuscitate them. I mean, who comes up with this stuff? I bet you won't hear this in any other show, though, right? Remember when Janet Jackson was in an interview, she said she was doing coffee enemas? Might be along the same lines. And the Lakers and the Clippers both play at the Staples Center in L.A., but the arena has different capacities depending on who's playing because of the way they lay out the courtside seats. There's 63 more tickets available when the Clippers play. So there's something I guarantee you didn't know. I'm guessing you probably didn't know any of those at all. As I said, I wanted to bring something new and different to you. Listen, I hope you have a great weekend. I really appreciate you being here to listen to the Rich Stevens Show. It means a lot to me. I tell you that every day. If you want to reach out, 305-707-7878, 305-707-7878. You can text or you can leave a voicemail. I really appreciate you taking time out of your very busy day to listen to the show. And I'll talk to you again on Monday.